What's going on, everybody? It's Dr. Homebrew. Welcome back. We have another episode for you. Of course, that's why you're listening here. We have two homebrews. We're back to two homebrews, Cooper. I appreciate that about us. I love that we have
Yeah,
two homebrews today.
people want to send us beer. It's cool.
Yeah,
Keep
I
on
like it.
brewing.
Yeah, it's cool, man. And you know what? I think maybe doing this show has sort of gotten me to brew a little bit more too. And I don't know when we'll talk about that. Maybe on the next show. I brewed a beer. Brian Shar had some pre-keg right off the fermenter there this morning.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, see, there you go. Prejudged.
Well, the experience more than the beer, but still.
Okay. Well, look, man, you know what? I'll take that as a compliment because a lot of thought goes into like tasting room design. So, you know, what are you going to do? That sounds great to me.
You know what, man? The beer was pretty good. So if the experience was better, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know which one of those is weighted more heavily, the experience with the beer. I guess it's free. So, I don't know what to say.
Free's good.
Before we get to today's guest, I want to thank our fine sponsor, 5-Star Chemicals. You go to 5starchemicals.com today and sign up for their Homebrew Club program. It's a cool thing. They're still doing it. I really love it. I think it's a great idea to sort of unify not only the homebrewing community around cleanliness and sanitization, but it's a good way for them to reach out as well and test new products and get feedback and stuff. So you can get free product, exclusive discounts, monthly educational seminars, and free stuff. So check that out, 5starchemicals.com. And if you want to type in the full URL, it's /homebrew-club-program, which I will say recently, within the last couple of years, I learned that that's not a backslash, it's a /.
I've never known what the difference is in the slashes.
I learned because it leans, right to left, I guess.
Forward. Yeah, it leans. Yeah.
Leans forward. Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess. Yeah, it leans left to right. Goes burp. So I've always been calling it backslash. And then I don't know where I picked that up. I was like, oh, wait a minute.
Forward
I'm
slash.
An incredible doofus. So,
speaking of 5-star, I was up in Seattle and judging National Homebrew competition regionals up there. They didn't have any in the San Francisco Bay Area this year, so I traveled up there and got to see Julia Hers from the Homebrew Association, but also hung out with Emily from 5-star. So
nice.
I judged with both of them the
cool.
first night I was there, and it was a great experience. There were a lot of female judges there, and
that's good.
Very well run competition and
nice.
some very good beers.
I like Emily. She's cool. She's always a blast to hang out with and go see at the booths and stuff like that. So that's cool.
Yeah. We all got to do a little beer tourism on Sunday. We ended up terrorizing a few parts of the greater Seattle area.
Where'd you go? Give me some standouts real fast.
Well, we started at Fremont, and I had a beer called, it's their Lush IPA, and they added really strongly pot smelling terpenes to it. So it was like the most, they call it Kush. They cross out the L of Lush and call it Kush.
Of course they do.
So
of course
I was kind of wowed by that. And you find those now and again, but it was the first one where this is really dank beer, and it was.
Are you a weed
dank
guy, Cooper? Are you a weed dude?
No, I'm not a very good weed guy, but no, I like the smell of it and stuff, but I don't.
I have a friend, Shay is like that, or friend Shay Comfort. He's like, I don't want to get high, I can't stand it, but I love the smell.
The aroma.
So anytime anyone smokes around me, I'm cool with it. I just don't want to do it.
Or just the fresh smell. I like the fresh smell better than the smell of the smoke. So we went to another brewery called we were going to go to Chuckanut, but they were on the way past. We drove by there, and we are going to go there after this other one up there in the Skagit Valley. But we went to one called Garden Path, and it was like a wild fermentation place, and they had a really cool bottle shop. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
That's a good name for a wild fermentation brewery. Garden Path.
Great.
That's very cool. I like that.
They had some really good stuff there.
So you went off the beaten path. Speaking of paths, you didn't stay in Seattle. Okay.
No, we went out different places, after judging in the night. Sometimes we just wanted to chill and have a conversation in a corner of a little bar and have a cocktail or whatever. But did
you go to Lucky Envelope by chance?
I did not go. No.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think you made a big mistake. Lucky Envelope's rad. If you're in the Seattle area, it's right by Rubens Brews, I think, in that general area. Good stuff. But anyway,
We
enough
also
about
went
that.
to
yeah, sorry. I guess we're
Brewing here
not.
in Ballard, and a couple of cool places. So the judging was at Black Raven, which was pretty decent too. That
I remember their beers being pretty cool. I remember their setup being pretty good too.
Yeah, they've
it's kind of
grown
a nice
a
little
lot.
space. Oh, really?
It's big. They have a big space now, and up in Woodinville, and still have the original location too, I think. But yeah, we didn't go there. That's
Yeah,
great.
I remember
Great
Black
weekend.
Raven from like when NHC was in Seattle.
That's when
That
I
was,
went
what,
too. Yeah.
10 years ago now.
Yeah, it was pretty good if I remember correctly. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about that. Rob, what's up, dude?
Not much. What's going on, JP?
Oh, not much, man. Just hanging out, drinking a Sierra Nevada Summerfest, which is apparently a refreshing summer lager, which is what they say on the can. So,
Nice.
and it's pretty good. And I saw that at Total Wine. I was like, got to pick up a 12 of that.
Just released.
Got to do it, man. Yeah.
How refreshing is it?
It's pretty refreshing, man. It's pretty good. I'm still, I'm seeing a lot of talk online about lagers these days in beers or not in beers, but in the beer industry, and a lot of articles specifically about what's the difference between a lager and a pilsner, and that seems to be a broad topic in the last 2-3 weeks. There's a lot of articles going, beer expert finally explained the difference between a pilsner and a lager. I'm like, dude, it's like, what's the difference between a rooster and a chicken? You know what I mean? It's like, come on, dude. We're getting a lot of traction out of it.
These are 5 weird things that lager brewers don't want you to know.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, that's cool that we're getting some knowledge out there, and I understand, from the inside looking out, it feels weird, but like I bought some lager the other day, some pilsners from a brewery, the old brewery, famous brewery. I'm not going to mention the name, and it sucked. It was awful. It was overly bitter and just didn't really taste very smooth. And I was like, this is very disappointing. So I knew I had to go with the old standby Sierra Nevada. They're never going to go wrong. They're just never going to do it. They know how to do it. I trust that this is lager. This other beer, I don't know. Depending on who brews it, I mean, I know who brews it, and so I think that that this person would do that. But then also, I don't know at the same time. Hard to say. It was hard to say if it was lagered, which I think, in my opinion, makes a bad pilsner.
Right.
Maybe it was
If it's sharp and sort of like not smoothed out.
Yeah.
You got those trick lagers these days with the Lutra yeast and all that,
Hate it. Don't like it. Never liked it. I've been on record. Never liked it.
It's one more thing you don't like, JP?
One more thing, dude. Absolutely.
Like I don't think there's anything wrong with the Narcissus method per se. That kind of fast lager that Tasty would do, where you kind of gradually ramp the temperature up. But I think there are brewers that say they use the Narcissus method, quote unquote, but just ferment it hot.
Yeah. I mean, we could do a whole segment on that, because I don't think a lot of brewers even really understand lagering. If I could just sort of be, better than everybody for a second. I feel like they don't, because a lot of brewers don't do lagers that often. So, with me, like, I don't make, I don't make lagers at all. So it would be hard for me to make that one off, or like a Kolsch I've made a couple times. It's hard for me to say that this is inherently like a good beer, because I don't have enough of my own product to compare it with. So it's like, oh, I did the lager thing, but it's not perfect. I don't have time to perfect this because I have to make 400 IPAs now. So I don't know.
A lot more work and a lot more time.
Yeah.
The brewers are just so thankful that the cold IPA came out. They can make something that's a little more towards that territory, but
which I do really like. I think that is a good beer style. I do like it. Sully has a good one. 2NA has a good one.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Anyway, Rob, again, welcome.
Thank you.
What beer do we have for you today, my friend?
You have a Belgian Golden Strong.
Belgian Golden Strong. All right. Now, is this a beer you do all the time? I can't imagine.
I used to brew it quite a bit. I haven't brewed it in about 2 years.
Okay. All right. What prompted you to fire it back up?
Was at a local tap room and saw they had Belgians on tap. And I said, hey, I need to have one of those. And as soon as I had a sip, I remembered why I brewed this.
You know what? It is one of those those that big umbrella of beers that we've sort of forgot about, I think, in the States. Like these are the beers that sort of launched the homebrewing movement, right? And sort of grounded the homebrewing community for like decades. But then you had, IPAs and pale ales getting drier and drier, and you had all these weird beers, and now it's like Belgians. Who wants to do that when you can just pack it full of hops?
Right.
So that's cool, man. Good for you.
It's actually the reason I started brewing beer, because
nice.
either I couldn't find it, or I couldn't afford to buy it when I did find it, so.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. That's right. Yeah, I'm like this with like smoke beers. Like we had the Schlenkerla on the other day as a commercial calibration, and I've bought like 4 or 5 of those beers since then. I forgot how much I love smoke beers. Nobody really does them. So I understand the importance of like revisiting your past, man, because I love smoke beers forever. They've always been great.
Yeah, that Schlenkerla, that was just amazing. I had 2 bottles and I drank another one like a day or 2 after that show.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this is so good.
Well, and I went to Total Wine the other day, and like I've been a couple times, and they have like 3 or 4 different ones there. They have like the Lent beer, and they had not the Meritzen, but the Urbach or whatever, and they had a double Bach, I think. So I bought a bunch of those. I'm like, hell yeah, that Lent beer rules. That Lent beer is probably like what a lot of like smoked beer drinkers would be okay with at their top limit, because they mix non-smoked malt with smoked malt, and it's like unfiltered, so it's a little sweeter, but it's not as smoky. It's not that real harsh bacony, but yeah, it's good. It's good stuff in the can too. It's kind of fun. But anyway, once again, I don't know why we're just rambling on the show, Rob. I apologize, man. We'll get to your beer here. Let's see. Shar.
Oh, yes.
You want to bat lead off on this?
Well, I certainly will. Thank you very much. Am I being elevated to the majors here, or?
Sure, dude.
All right, whatever makes me happy. Right, Rob, thank you so much for sharing this beer. I really enjoyed it a lot. I'll get right to it. Aroma. Initially, the aroma is definitely Belgian yeast, and we're talking about Belgian beers. I just love that aroma and that flavor that you can only get from those kinds of yeast. So they're specific. You could go to any homebrew yeast catalog and pick any of those out, and they're going to make great beer. That's going to throw off the esters and the phenols. There's good phenols in here. Like the little bit of that smoky peppery without going so far as to be plastic or bad. There's some kind of stone fruit, apple. I get kind of an appley character as far as esters. Not appley that I'd go so far as to say is acetaldehyde or DMS or anything, but it's the kind of aroma. It's a good apple aroma that yeast throws. There's no hop aroma, low malt aroma. There is a little bit of low pepper that's probably from the ethanol, not from the yeast. It's kind of hard to pick those two out, but there's I didn't get really any harsh fusel stuff in the aroma. So I gave that 8 out of 12. Appearance is 2 out of 3, primarily because the head is very low, and I'll put mine up to the screen. Okay, I judged this 2 hours ago. I left the bottle out. I just poured more here, so you might say, well, that got uncarbonated while it was sitting on your kitchen counter, Brian. But no, it was like this when I poured it out of the bottle in the first place. There's very, very low head. It should have a huge rocky head. It should be almost hard to pour into the glass because there's so much head. Like if you have a 12-ounce Duvel and a 12-ounce glass, forget about it. It's never going to work. But it's a little bit missing. It's missing in that area. It's crystal clear. It's darker golden color, but I knocked it a point for that lack of that big head. Flavor initially is a sort of the fermentation generated esters, followed by peppery, slightly sharp ethanol. What was weird, at no point was the ethanol sharp to me, other than when I first poured it and took that first sip. Maybe that was just my palate getting acclimatized. So I'm not going to knock you for that. Everything else, the ethanol was very smooth to me. bitterness and alcohol balance malt in mid palate. It's weird because this is not a super malty beer. It's not balanced toward malt, but I don't get a ton of bitterness in here. And I think in some beers like this that are strong, higher alcohol beers, the ethanol does have kind of especially when it's more of a peppery ethanol. Whether it's smooth or peppery, that alcohol balances malt as much as hop bitterness does. That's my own belief. I have no evidence of this at all, but other than my own palate. But I do tend to think in beers like this, alcohol is part of what creates the balance. It's well attenuated, which is great for a beer this big. Ethanol is largely smooth into a long finish that's malt and a little bit of ethanol. Medium low bitterness is, as I mentioned before, a little bit less than expected for style. And as it warms up, I definitely get a little fusel alcohol in here, which I didn't when it was cooler. I let this out of the fridge for about 20 minutes before I judged it, and I get just a little bit of fusel harshness in here as it warms up. So flavor 11 out of 20. Mouthfeel, body is medium. Carbonation is very low, which may explain the absence of head. And there may be bottle variation in this. I have the one bottle, so you never know in that situation. Less warming than I would have expected, but there's still warming here. And it may just be this is, I think, the last of the 3 beers that I judged, so that might have made that warming seem a little less than actually is warranted from the alcohol. I'm definitely getting some warming right now. Having taken like an hour and a half break of drinking beer here, I'm definitely getting some warming. Neither creamy nor astringent. So I gave it 3 out of 5 because the carbonation is so important for this style. I took 2 points off. Overall impressions, 6 out of 10 for a total of 30, which is still very good. I like this beer a lot. I think it does a good job of being high alcohol.
Period.
With you made alcohol. Thank you. You gave it to me. Yes, you are a good man. These are hard beers to make, and even a little bit of high temperature excursion during fermentation can lead you to have fusels. There are some fusels in here, but it's not a fusel bomb to me. Some of these, I've been judging beer for 20 years, and 20 years ago, sometimes you'd have any kind of high alcohol style and you'd hold it up to your nose and be like, oh, sweet Jesus, do I have this sample? Do I have to taste any of this to write something down on a score sheet? It's certainly not like that. Mm-hmm. I think there's some fusel, but it's not dominant in the beer. I think if the carbonation were correct, that would fix the mouthfeel and the appearance issues. And I think it also would have a positive effect on flavor. It would feel lighter. It would have more of the flavor. It would draw out more of the flavors that you want from this beer. So I think carbonating to a higher level, which is, as I've talked about on this show before, it's devilishly hard to do as a home brewer, to carbonate for anything, much less competition. And it's certainly hard to get carbonation up to a level where you really ideally want it for a Belgian Golden Strong. Also, because there is some fusel alcohol at this higher temperature, think about your fermentation temperature, monitoring your fermentation temperature, controlling your fermentation temperature. And it's especially important in big beers like this, because if you put a fermenter in your basement or garage or wherever, and it's where it may be, let's say 55 degrees, that's not going to keep the yeast from going up to 90 or 100 when they're eating all that wort and turning that into beer. So some kind of active fermentation control, if it's possible to do that, is always helpful for a really big beer like this. But I think it's still a decent score. I think it's got a lot of potential as a beer, and I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Very good. All right, Cooper.
Right on.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Brian said there. In the aroma, it is quite fruity and estery with some apricot and pear. lightly spicy with a low white pepper-like aspect. That's kind of nice. The alcohol is quite upfront and noticeable. I thought it was a bit on the solventy side in the nose. The malt is bready sweet, fairly neutral and out of the way as hoped. It's shouldn't be super distinctly malty of any certain kind. So, the sugars and the malts used seem to be playing right there. No DMS or diacetyl noted. Has just a low herbal floral hop. 7 out of 12 for the aroma. Agree on the colors, gray, deep golden color with a low whitish head that falls flat fairly soon after pouring, leaving a thin collar, fine bubbles, and only a wisp of a cover. Other than that, fairly good clarity. 2 out of 3 for appearance. Yeah, it should have a much bigger, fluffier head to start, and it should linger very well too. Flavor wise, again, that low neutral malt flavor is good, with a big fruitiness, pear peach like. It's just it's kind of dulled a bit, and I think that's probably because the carbonation isn't popping alongside that and pushing those flavors a little bit more. We'll get to that in mouthfeel. The bitterness is medium, with a low floral hop, a spicy, sharp note of peppery phenols throughout, with a warming, somewhat sharp alcoholic solventy note, pushing through pretty strongly. The balance in this beer is to the alcohol and the yeast character, I would say. And if you had to say malt versus hops, it's a little bit on the maltier side. When you get these fresh in Belgium, which I haven't had the fortune to do yet in my life, I understand that they're definitely a little hoppier than when we taste them here. And sometimes even the good homebrews that you get are modeled after some of those, and people think that it's not supposed to be, a hoppy style, but read the guidelines, and there should be a little more substantial hop, I think, than we have here. But again, the fermentation of the beer seems strongly in the Belgian territory. Just maybe some issues of some signs of stress or other issues going on with it. The beer finishes, I would say, semi-dry. There's a hint of a bit of a sweetness in there. I don't know if it finished out all the way, but these should be very, very highly attenuated. It may be that it's just playing a little flabbier without the carbonation, and it's like just playing that way. But and it could be some sweetness from the alcohol as well. But when I drank this last night, I don't know if it was the beer, but I was starting to get a little odd little headache in the back of my head.
Thinking too hard. You're thinking too much.
Get from higher alcohols.
Having to work your brain out a little bit.
I know. I just never do that anymore.
Can you smell toast? Are you smelling toast right now?
The beer has a faint toasty. Not really.
How about toes? Can you smell toes?
No.
Oh, okay.
The beer is not as deceptive seeming as many of these. Like sometimes the alcohol is just super smooth. This one, it's more noticeable as like, okay, there's a sharp alcohol there. Medium full bodied, very obvious warmth, heat in there, and as it warms up, it goes further down the throat. Quite low CO2, where it should be very spritzy. And I took it down a few points on mouthfeel. I had a 10 on flavor just because of some of the issues I was finding there. Well, it's like the style, it's pretty good, but mouthfeel is where it felt really flat. There's just no, since the carbonation is such a key aspect of it, there's nothing there, and it's really hurting the beer, sadly. Just feels a bit lifeless because of that, and due to the kind of high body with the low carbon dioxide in solution there. Could be great on draft, and very different, but in these bottles, this is how it's still going. This is a good attempt at a Belgian Golden Strong. Just needs much more CO2 to keep it as effervescent as it should be. You got to work to keep those higher alcohols at bay. Use a big pitch of the intended yeast strain. Seems like the strain you used was, probably a good strain, but it might have been a little stressed. Plenty of oxygenation at the start. The recipe part really doesn't seem too far off. The malts are right. Hops are pretty much right. You could go a little higher on the hop. Seems like it's a good recipe, and you've brewed these before, so you know what you're doing with them. It's just, dial back the malt sweetness. and the body a little bit, and get the yeast to attenuate a little bit better to dry it out. I do agree with Brian. This is not a fusel bomb. And the CO2 being added will push a lot of those flavors. I was again 6 out of 10 overall impression. Mine added up to a 27. I'm just going to stick there, but I could come up a point or two. I could see Brian's 30 as a reasonable score for it. It's in the high end of good for me. It just slightly misses the mark on style, mainly because of the carbonation and some very minor flaws. So just subtly dipping down into that territory, but it'd be easy to improve it and make it even better for sure. And would love to hear what your recipe is and all of that stuff, and hear what Mr. JP has to say about it too.
Well, you know what grinds my, yeah, I mean, obviously I agree with most everything everyone says. In the flavor I get initially, maybe a little bit of bubble gum. I got a little sort of, the solvency I can't figure out. Like, I don't know if I'm just not dialed in for it or not, but like maybe a touch of green apple skin, a little bubble gum, so maybe stressed ferment or whatever. But I will say that the flavors that you have, like the fermentation byproducts and the malt and the recipe, it's an amazing flavor. Yeah. The flavor is solid, and I would love. I mean, if this was, I would settle between the two boys. I think it's maybe 29-30, right? Maybe that carbonation absolutely kills you on the score for this, but we already have been over that. But if this was carbonated, I would be easily like 37, something like that. It's just like I think that this beer is calling out for way more effervescence, and the flavors that you have are good. Are there some off flavors? I think so, yeah. But I think that you could easily overlook them because the flavors that you have are predominantly awesome. They're very, very good. Like, they're dynamic. They're they last a long time. They're not off-putting and they're not cloying also. You can drink it and there's enough, like that pear, whatever you did, but that pear sort of through the middle palate, I think perks it up. And, a lot of these beers can be sweet and heavy and kind of, I don't really syrupy maybe, but this is not that. I mean, you could easily run this at like lower volumes and get, a single and a double out of this recipe. And you could have such a dynamic beer with that same base recipe. It's very good. Very good. So excellent job. Let's go through your recipe and then we can get to like questions and stuff.
Thanks. Yeah. So clearly there's a flaw. I would say actually, so I entered this in the Hubs competition that they just had, the Placerville group up there.
Oh, cool.
And you guys are right there. I 28, 29, and a 30. Yeah. Wow. And carbonation being the issue. So I had brewed this early in March, and I actually added some dextrose to it and was going to keg carbonate it.
Okay.
Condition.
Yeah.
And what happened is, like Brian Shar and I were talking about before the thing, we've had this weird weather where it's been up and down. Well, remember in March we had that big cold snap.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden the house, and I come in here, and so anyways, they didn't get to sit at 70, and I got behind the 8-ball and had to stick them on CO2 before I could get it bottled. So all the way around, the carbonation has been an issue.
It borked you up a little bit. Yeah.
Yep.
Might be adding a little of that sweetness too, just the priming sugar that didn't ferment all the way out, and not, if it was more bone dry, it would play a little bit.
That's a good point.
You think that was like 3/4 cup or something like that? I mean, it's
not that much, a couple points or so, but yeah.
Really? You think so? Okay. I never knew that too. I always sort of like wondered that and went back and forth, and I just didn't really care anymore to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, that's what they call it, home brewing, right? I mean, we have lives and jobs and families and everything else,
and weather,
and we can't. You can't control every variable a lot of the time for most people, and it's just life gets in the way of brewing, and everyone that home brews can empathize with that.
Yeah,
except
me.
What was the yeast strain and the water and that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
It hops
came out to 85 grams of priming sugar per keg. So that's what was in there. But so this recipe is 71% Pilsner malt, 5 pounds of candy sugar, 5% carafoam. Something that I forgot to add in it, as any home brewer can empathize with me, probably the reason for the low head retention. Pound and a half of white wheat that didn't make it in.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
Yeah, that'll do it. That unmalted wheat is critical to getting that giant head, and it does have a little bit of a flavor contribution, although I didn't really miss it in the flavor.
Right. Maybe in mouthfeel, perhaps just a little.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then some Crystal 15. That's it. The hops, bittering hops with EKG, and then 30 minutes EKG and saws. And for the water, I filter. I have a 0.05 micron filter, and it's not the regular carbon, but I did add calcium chloride, canning salt, Epsom salt, and gypsum. Looks like about 2 grams each or so.
What were the amounts of hops that you added?
Let's see. 2.6 ounces of EKG at 60 minutes, and a half an ounce of EKG and a half an ounce of saws at 30. And then my hop stand was another ounce of saws and another half ounce of EKG.
Okay. Those are great hops, but neither one of them are real big alpha acid hops, which might be like, I think I think maybe all three of us kind of noted the hop bitterness was maybe a little low for style.
Oh, yeah, that's the first thing that stood out to me. Yeah, all three of us at the same time, but me first a little bit, and then you guys after me. Yeah,
but yeah, those are great hops, but I'm not sure I wouldn't go with something more like a Horizon or something like that. That's a very neutral bittering hop. It's also I don't know. It's German. It's closer to Belgium than England is. I don't know.
I don't know. I like how everything tastes. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mess with it.
It's more complex in the malt than the typical one, and I think that might. I don't know. I would honestly either dial back a little bit, like the crystal, the caramel malt edition, even though it's a fairly light. You don't need it. I mean, most of them are just going to be Belgian Pilsner malt with sugars, and that's about it.
But don't they do like a 4-hour boil or something for them too to caramelize it a little bit?
I'm not sure on that, honestly, but yeah, that probably it could be.
Brian, you're supposed to be an expert.
They use the sugars. They use the sugars to boost the gravity. I don't think they drive a 4-hour boil. No.
I don't know that I'm getting them. Yeah,
it could be 3. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that the crystal malt is really hurting you here. I mean, I'm not getting a ton of sweetness out of this beer. To me, it's pretty well attenuated. There is some degree of low sweetness it's endemic to all high alcohol beers, and endemic makes it sound bad. It's just part of what the strong beers are typically going to have, some degree of very low sweetness in the background, just because of the the high starting gravity and the fact you're not going to finish at 10:02 or something like that. And I don't know. I think it works.
I think the problem here is that this is a hard beer to make, probably an expensive beer to make, I would guess. And it's lacking, I think, one of the basic, ingredients, I guess, which is carbonation. So I would hesitate personally to adjust anything before I had it properly carbonated. And I don't know how you're going to do that. I mean, maybe you still have some in the keg so you can make that determination, because again, the flavor is awesome. And I personally wouldn't touch a single thing. I would love to see this just with carbonation and see what that does.
Yeah. It's on tap. It's properly carbonated now.
Okay, so what do you think the difference is? Do you think it's helpful? What do you think what these guys are saying is good?
The carbonation in the beer is helpful, but it's not helping with the head or anything. It's still falling flat, that wheat addition, so.
Okay, but how about flavors, like Cooper saying kill the crystal, Shar saying you don't have to, but
I think the flavor's great. I've just recently started to pick up that little bit of bubble gum that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And that pear through the middle is just phenomenal, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I
That
agree.
is, yeah, one really
What-
nice thing about it for sure.
What
That-
yeast did you use with this?
That was Imperial's triple double,
Okay.
Huh.
All right.
and it's rated for the Belgian Golden Strong, and you know they don't say where it originated from or where they claim it did, but
It's almost like, you know, sitting out here for the however long we're doing the show, 35 minutes. It's almost like a spiced pear liqueur kind of thing. It's almost like a spiced nose to it. I don't know, man. I bet this carbonated, you know, rules, but of course you do what you want to do. If you need some more like, you know, girth or whatever
Right.
through the body. But maybe that white wheat is fine. So maybe you add that in, and maybe that's your change. Properly carbonate it, of course. Send it to us, and
absolutely.
then maybe that's it. I don't know.
Every man needs more girth, JP. But have you,
No,
Rob?
that's not what
Have
my
you?
therapist says. My therapist says that whatever girth we are born with is fine.
That's we all have to be ourselves.
Yeah.
But Rob, have you used that yeast before, or is this your first time using that?
That is my first time using that yeast, and I think the esters that it threw off are double what the competition's yeast was that I had been using.
it's
Is that what motivated you to try that out? As you weren't happy with the ester levels you had before?
Yeah, it was hard to get. In fact, I even kind of warmed the fermentation on this one to try to pull some of those out of there, and
Yeah.
maybe changing the yeast was all I needed to do and keep my temp at where I had it. And what you said, Charwood.
Yeah.
I love the flavor of this beer, dude. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so give it a shot. I would stick with that yeast personally.
Go take it over to your Soda Stream, JP, and just go.
I don't have one, but ironically enough, we've been talking about getting one
Yeah.
Mm,
because we want to spend money on dumb shit.
mm.
I don't know. You know, they used to have that thing. I don't know if they still make it anymore. There's the adapter for a 2-liter soda bottle that you can put a thing on, a CO2 ball lock on.
I have one in a Rubbermaid container in my garage. Yeah.
There you go. That would be the perfect thing for this. You can just
Yeah, I really
pop
would.
it in, shake it up, and you know, explode everywhere.
Mm.
Yeah.
Rob, anything else? Any other questions for the lads?
I don't think so. I think it did finish pretty low. I mean, finishing gravity was 12. So
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think,
Carbonation's weird, man. It really
Yeah, it
does a
is.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
so,
And it started up in the 1070s or so, or 1080.
starting was 1083 on this.
Okay.
Wow.
1012. Plenty of oxygen, you know,
Yeah.
pitch. I did a big 2-liter starter.
I thought it might just be a perception thing that the sweetness is more noticeable without that perkiness there of the carbon dioxide.
Did you guys get bubblegum kind of green apple
Yeah.
thing too, or no? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, a
And-
little-
but that's not. Is that
little
out of
bubblegum.
style? I don't think that's out of style, right? For
No.
Belgium?
A lot of esters can get cranked out in these Belgian ferments.
Yeah.
You know, any kind of fruit is fair game, and bubblegum I think is just a combination of fruits, you know, strawberry and banana, traditionally for like the Bazooka
Mm.
Joe type.
Okay,
You can add
okay.
other fruits, but yeah.
Interesting. So it's not necessarily always a yeast issue. It could just be phenols combining,
Yes. Or esters combining.
esters combine. I will never get those two correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I love it. Learn something new,
You
man.
know, it's a good beer. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was, I'd like to have it more carbonated too. And yeah, keep doing that one.
All
Yeah.
right.
The recipes did seem really good to me. So it's more interesting than most of them.
Yeah. Just don't forget your weed again, dude.
Right.
Better eat your Wheaties.
Dummy.
Yeah. All right, Rob. If that's it, we'll let you split.
All right, cool guys. Thanks
Cool.
for having me on. Thanks for
All right, dude.
beer.
You
Yeah,
got
send
it.
another
Thank
one
you.
sometime.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. All right, brother.
We'll do it.
Later.
Thanks.
We're gonna take a quick break here. We're gonna come back and we have what do we have? An ESB or something like that coming up next?
Yeah, Kevin's got an English strong bitter for us.
All right, Kevin's in the waiting room. We'll get him on here.
All
Hang on,
right.
everyone. It's Dr. Homebrew. We'll be right back. All right, thanks for hanging on, everybody. We are back here with another homebrew and another homebrewer, Kevin. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you got here? What did you send us? Strong bitter.
Yeah, so this is a British strong bitter. I've been making this for a bit, and keep kind of tooling with the recipe as I go each time.
Same. Yeah, I hear you. But there's not a whole lot really to work with in a grain bill. So are you just sort of like fine tuning everything?
Pretty much. I mean, just experimenting with different things like different yeasts or different
Okay.
temperatures. Just finding the right mix of different kind of malts to kind of get the flavors I'm looking for.
No, wow, you're really going for. Is this your favorite style?
I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's definitely a fond one. I think
Okay.
I kind of cut my teeth, I think, learning to like beer, drinking like bitters and dry stouts.
Nice.
All
So
right.
it brings back fond memories when I sip on one.
Awesome. Okay. Sounds good. Brian's, I'm gonna need you both to come down a little bit. 'Cause
Okay.
I had to goose, I
In
had to goose-
score or in our
both.
okay.
Yes. Preferably in score. Yes, absolutely. Because no, I don't know. I'm just kidding.
We're gonna have
yeah,
some
just
live
volume.
level
Perfect.
testing right here.
great.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll cut it all out. All right, Cooper. Why don't you
All
start
right.
off? buddy?
Yeah. The beer had a good fill level, light hiss upon opening. In the nose, I'm getting a pleasant, bready, toasty malt aroma up front. The medium low, earthy, lightly herbal hop, medium fruity esters. It's clean, no DMS or diacetyl, only a faint caramel in the background. But it seems to exhibit a really clean ale fermentation. I do like the yeast character in it. It's characterful English without being too over the top and gnarly. Appearance wise, it's a rich, deep orangey amber color. Has a medium low whitish head that persists admirably. Very finely formed with tight foam and fine bubbles. So I had a 10 out of 12 on the aroma, 3 out of 3 on appearance. It's right there. Wonderfully clear. In the flavor, it's got a really nice, rich, bready and lightly biscuit-like malt with a faint caramel. It's nicely complex. I like that about this beer is that the malt has a lot of different aspects being played here. It's not just a one-note song. Medium bitterness rises, nicely to balance the beer, the malt aspect pretty well. Low earthy floral hop flavor, quite fresh tasting. Overall, the beer finishes dry, but the malt hints at a sweetness there that lingers into the aftertaste with those little bit of that hop bitterness. Not too much hop flavor, but because it dries off the palate, it's pretty dry. Clean ale fermentation, no DMS or diacetyl. I'd say it's got a smooth, medium bitterness, but not really edgy. I think it might benefit from a little bit more of an edge to the malt, and I think that might be a mineral thing. But I'll talk about that a little bit more later. There is a very low resiny aspect to the hop, which I like, and I might like to see a little more of. The beer has a medium full body in the mouthfeel. 14 out of 20 for flavor. The beer has a medium full body. It's not just down to medium only. It's a little above medium plus, I guess I should say. But I find it very smoothly quaffable. It's for a bold and fuller bodied characterful beer, I haven't really said anything about the alcohol. The alcohol is just kind of there. It's not super noticeable. It's real clean and easy and low. I'm not getting any real warmth in the mouth feel. But yeah, it's just goes down really easy. Medium low carbonation drives it well. It's not really creamy and there's no astringency here either. Kind of where it needs to be for mouthfeel, 4 out of 5 there. Pretty much where it needs to be. Overall, I really enjoyed the strong bitter. It plays quite well to style. The malt complexity is excellent and fresh tasting at a nice level. I feel like the bitterness and the resiny aspect of the hop flavor could come up just a bit more, not intensely, but doing so wouldn't hurt the already really nice balance that's here of flavors. I guess just use the freshest possible, most authentic hops, that the characterful English hops for the recipe. Some of them will even use US hops, but if you do that, you should use a really light hand. Don't go crazy with those. But perhaps also, I don't know, talk about your water, but just if you're already adjusting your water towards more of a Burton Ale type profile, you might push it a little more towards that territory, just a touch more. And that's going to help the hop have that kind of edge that I want it to have, just a little bit more. That's going to play off the dryness that's there, the nice malt flavors that are there, and just have that little edge. That's just the only thing I'm slightly missing. I landed at a 39 on this beer. I think it's excellent. And you could improve it from here and do really well in competitions with this beer. If you haven't already, but yeah, love to hear what Brian might have to say about the beer too.
Yeah. All right, Brian.
All right. So Kevin, I have to begin with the question that I always use, except for with Rob in the previous segment where I totally forgot to ask.
Wow.
Are you in a homebrew club?
I am. I'm with the Silicon Valley Sudzers.
They're a great club. When I used to live in the peninsula, we would do things with them, and always a good group. Anybody in the Bay Area on the peninsula should take a look at what Sudzers is one of their homebrew club options.
Don't they have like a computer tower that has a tap on it that they bring out to the Northern California Homebrewers Festival to pour beer sometimes? I don't know. It's been a while.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
It'd be very fitting. Probably like one of those old like Apple IIs or whatever that's like wildly rare, but like, I don't know, man. I feel like my grandpa gifted this to me, so let's make a beer tower out of it.
One of those old puke green Macintoshes with didn't even have a fan that was passively cooled. You could passively cool it with beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
So cool. Yeah, I enjoyed this beer quite a bit. I echo a lot of what Brian had said. Aroma, I got a low earthy hop aroma, low caramel aroma, medium low malt aroma overall. Nothing off in the aroma, no diacetyl, nothing else that shouldn't be there. It doesn't smack you in the face, but it's not supposed to. This is a British style, and most British styles aren't going to be like that. So 9 out of 12 for aroma. Appearance, 3 out of 3. Head is low with long retention.
Same.
Classic. It's classic British style characteristic. This beer is crystal clear. Color's medium amber. Flavor, 15 out of 20. Initially, the impression is low malt with hop bitterness coming up to balance. Earthy hop flavor at a low level kind of comes up mid-palate as well. There's a very low toasty malt flavor. It's well attenuated. Finish is quick and balanced toward malt. It's not one of these beers where the finish, where you're drinking it and you're done and the flavor just drops off a cliff. That's usually an indication that something's wrong. There's a difference between a finish that is somewhat rapid like this and something where it just stops. So again, that's part of, I think, the drinkability factor of this beer. That's one of the hallmarks of this style and the style guidelines. And I think one of the hallmarks of drinkability is you drink it, you enjoy it, it lasts a little bit, then you're ready for another sip.
Hell yeah.
Which I just had. So 15 out of 20 for flavor. Mouthfeel, 5 out of 5. I get a little bit of low warming from this, which is interesting because the style is looking at the guidelines, it's 4.6 to 6.2. And it's, of course, for Britain, that's strong. That's always kind of funny when you think about these beers. That it's a strong bitter, but it might be 4.6%.
Well, and it's funny because that's a giant range too.
It really is.
I mean, what the hell's going on up there?
Sometimes the guidelines will be accommodating just one beer that's a little bit of an outlier in the high end of something or the low end of something and pull it in. Yeah. Just make that range fit there. But yeah, sometimes they'll mention the outliers too.
Yeah, like an honorary doctorate or something like that.
He's kind of a doctor, but he's only a doctor of homebrew.
There you go. Right. Yeah.
And as a brief aside, this was the style that had been called ESB in the previous guidelines and multiple previous editions, but they don't call it ESB because ESB is a registered trademark of Fuller's.
Is it really?
So, yeah, I did not know that. And as an IP attorney, I'm like, wow, that's very interesting. I did not know that. And it's much like how Anchor Steam, like steam beer, can only be made by Anchor, and everything else is California Common.
Right.
The same thing with ESB. So apparently, the only beer that can be an ESB is Fuller's, which is a great ESB, by the way. But for everybody else, just makes a strong bitter.
I still like calling these ESBs.
Oh yeah, I do too. Well, and I think I suspect this guideline was also an attempt to get away from what lingering attachment people might have to Red Hook ESB, if that's even still manufactured, or other US variants that may not be in ESB. But anyway, back to mouthfeel: low warming, medium body, low carbonation, neither creamy nor astringent, is 5 out of 5. Overall impression, give it an 8 for a total of 40. I think this is a very drinkable, which is a good score. It's excellent, actually. It's not good. It's an excellent score. It's a very drinkable beer. And as I said before, it's one of the hallmarks of this style. Even at that kind of strong, 5-6%, you can still have several of these and not be all loopy. This is a very tasty beer with no off aromas or flavors. I judged this after it had been out of my fridge for maybe 45 minutes, and I had a note that maybe a little more malt character would be welcome. But as it warms up this has been sitting at room temperature for probably 2 hours now, and I get a lot of malt flavor now.
Mm-hmm.
There was a good medium level of, or maybe medium low malt flavor beforehand, but it really kind of comes up. The one thing that I might change, that would be, it's hard to find things to change with this beer because it's so good.
Yeah.
One of the things that the guidelines talk about is, a low toasty, bready type flavor, and maybe a little more bready, bread crust, toast, just a hint more.
It is
a little bit.
It is
might help.
Crisp.
Yes.
And it is, I don't want to say American, because it's not necessarily what I mean, but I think you're right. I think it finishes clean. There is that caramel on the end. But yeah, I think just a little something that evokes like inherently British.
Kind of a toffee or something in there.
Yeah, I think that might be what this needs to just round off that, I don't want to call it sharpness, but you know what I mean? That like,
there is a
this
little
beer
bit
is done.
of
The cliff right there, just to soften that a little bit. Yeah, I think you're right.
I just get mostly
2% caramel.
Yeah, bread crust and biscuits in here, and there's the caramel aspect was low to me, but it doesn't have to have a ton. There's wide variability, and to get the balance right, you can play different ways. But it's a really good beer.
Yeah. What did you give it, Shar?
I gave it a 40.
And Cooper, remind me again what you gave it.
39, sir.
Okay. I'm doing what I hate and drinking on the air while it's my turn to talk. I don't like that.
Well, we can talk while you're drinking. It's okay.
No, overall, I do like this beer. I personally, for me, I think it's a little heavy on the like crystal malts or caramel malts. But it sounds like you're brewing this to find what you want, and you're just kind of goofing around. So, far be it for me. But if I was paying for it, I'd be like, I think I'm gonna go back to what I said. I think it's almost like inherently American because it doesn't really taste British, but it's like a late 90s craft beer, which I like. I miss that era of craft beer sometimes. Like I just made a pale ale with a bunch of crystal malt in it. I think it was pretty good.
They called it microbrews back then.
Yeah, right. Before Gastropub was screamed into existence. But I think it is a great beer. There's a lot of good flavor to it. I think I want a little more yeast character too. I think I want a little something, because right now it's just sort of like a lot of caramel malt, and then it goes off a cliff. It's done. It's like the graph ends. I want to stretch this a little bit. I want to stretch this experience out because I do like it. It starts really fresh and inviting and sort of enveloping, and then it's done. Does that make sense? Char's nodding.
I hear
Cooper
that.
is frozen in time. He's like, I don't
I'm
know,
just-
man.
yeah,
I don't know what this kid's fucking saying.
I'm just listening. There are words coming out of your mouth, but I'm not.
Are they making
exactly
sense?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay,
how they
'cause
all fit
sometimes-
together.
Yeah, neither do I. That's the beauty of doing this live, you know?
Yeah.
We should do a pre-scripted show one day just to
Not
teach you guys
British
a
enough.
lesson.
Not,
Not British enough. That's what I
don't know.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was talking about the yeast character, it's like it's so just clean. It's not super characterful, but and I think maybe the malt complexity is might be covering up the yeast complexity a little bit. I don't know. But
Or maybe that's it. Maybe it is the malt complexity that Kevin wants to drive here and not the yeast characteristic.
and in talking to him about it, he's been working on it for a while. And sometimes you can go a little
Yeah.
too kitchen sink. And where if you just go back to basics, like, okay, a British strong beer
Yeah.
is this and this, and
Well, let's find out. So I would give it a 38.
okay.
I literally plucked that from the ether.
If you can get some crisp Maris Otter as your base, and just get some really, really good
Let's see what he
floor
has.
malted English barley,
Yeah.
that is going to be the key to this, making this beer right. And
Kevin.
the water too.
Hit us with your recipe, man. Let's get into this. I love English style beers. Let's do it.
And certainly one of the reasons I like this beer is it's supposed to be like a common man's beer, right? Something you just have in the pub.
Yes.
So it isn't one of those beers that hits you in the face for sure. It's a
Yes.
very just drinkable. But anyway, so the recipe, I made 5-gallon batch, 5.5-gallon batch, 10 a little over 10 pounds of extra pale Maris Otter malt, an ounce and 12 ounces of English pale ale, about 8 ounces of biscuit. I used, it was kind of a kitchen sink. I have like, whenever I'm putting my recipes together, I have kind of things in my little area and I go, oh, how about this? And so what I got in it is 8 ounces of Cariston malt, 35, Lovey Blonde, Crystal 55, 8 ounces of that. And then, in the past I've used midnight wheat to kind of adjust the color. But this time I used some Crystal 150. So, and for me, it kind of, there was more malt flavor than I usually have gotten. And then I used about 4 ounces of that, a couple ounces of acid malt. And then I don't know why, but the first time I made this, I put a little honey malt in it. And this has got about 3 ounces of honey malt. I don't know if you can actually taste it, but it's just something I kind of went with. And then for the hops, I did a 3/4 of an ounce at 60 minutes of Magnum for bittering, 30 minutes of EKG, 3/4 of an ounce, 15 minutes, an ounce of EKG, and then the last 5 minutes, another ounce of EKG.
I would take the honey malt out.
Yeah.
We consistently on the show do, I don't know, maybe it's just the three of us, but consistently the honey malt is not a thing that adds anything to beer.
Yeah.
Well, and especially because I think you have, if I remember correctly, a couple caramely kind of things.
Right.
I don't
right.
think the honey malt is benefiting there at all. I think if the honey malt was like you're making like a blonde ale, that can kind of like pep it up a little bit. But yeah, I think in this, I think it's a little too much. Yeah.
To the Caristan, other caramel stuff in there should be good. The biscuit, I picked that up. That's nice. I wouldn't do anything there. Nice biscuity. Can you? I know a lot of people like to use Magnum for bittering, and it's a good way to get the IBUs that you need without adding a lot of plant matter to your beer. But why not bitter with the EKG or a Fuggles or something? Maybe an English hop as well, and just keep it all English might be one way to go too, instead of the German Magnum.
Yeah, thanks. That'd be great. Yeah, I definitely could. I know in past iterations I have, but I just had the Magnum on hand and I threw it in.
It won't hurt it, but yeah.
Magnum's very neutral.
Yeah, does it matter? Does that because you've said this before, Coop, I think to Rob. Does the bittering matter that much? Like if the source, because you don't really get a whole lot of flavor or aroma, or I feel like maybe that was disproven a couple years ago.
It's not like
Can't
the
remember.
flavor of the hops just disappears, but yeah, as you go earlier and earlier in the boil, the less of the hop actual flavor carries through, at least the more volatile aspects of it. But I just, from a tradition standpoint, why not use English ingredients in an English
Okay,
beer?
so it's not like a functional reason. It's just because it feels good.
It's just
vibes.
because, yes.
You're brewing on vibes, and I appreciate that. Okay, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify because in case I was incorrect by something, but I'm not.
Well,
I'm smart.
it-
I know exactly what's going on.
It makes it more British, right? To use
Right. Yeah.
all AKG.
Yeah.
And
How
what
can this get
was,
more British? None more
what-
British.
None more British. So Kevin, what did I miss? Did you
The
mention
yeast?
what yeast you used? Yeah.
I didn't say, I used a Lelleman's Nottingham yeast.
Okay.
And I've used
Classic.
that one, and then I've used Windsor, and I don't know which one I like better.
Have
This
you ever
Nottingham-
used West Yorkshire from White
I
Labs?
haven't.
That
haven't.
is, Jamil turned me on to that. He goes, I will never make a British yeast or a British beer without this yeast.
Okay.
Ferment it a little cold, 66, 68. Awesome. Great beer. A great yeast. I will never make a British yeast, British beer without it too. Give it a shot. It's very flavorful. Nottingham is sort of more on the neutral side, if I remember, because we used to at More Beer used to give that for, I think, in replacement for champagne yeast for bottle conditioning. I forget, or something like that. It was pretty like neutral early on, right?
Well,
Yeah,
a lot of people use it,
yeah.
and yeah, it works well sometimes too. For
I
sure.
mean, it ferments, but I guess it
Clean.
depends on what you want. If you want a yeast-driven beer, I wouldn't do that. But if you want to focus more on malt and hops, then yeah, I mean,
so
more
then,
neutral side.
down to
Actually-
the. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, actually, this round, one of the things I did was try to ferment it hotter than I normally do. So I raised the temperature kind of towards the higher end of it at about 66 degrees for like 10 days.
You can go higher, I
To
think.
try to get some of that yeast character, but you're saying higher to.
I mean,
develop-
I would. What do you guys think? 68, I would think.
It's not over the top estery. You
Yeah.
could go up 2
No.
degrees. It wouldn't hurt it.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
You
Would
might
it-
get a
would it-
little more character out of that, but yeah,
Yeah.
work with the range that your yeast wants. If you're using the Nottingham, yeah, you could go to 68. If you're using the Yorkshire, maybe keep it down to the 66, 67 and see.
I
where
had
it
great.
goes.
I mean, I did that dark mild with that West Yorkshire at 68, and I think it came over really well.
Mm.
Yeah.
What about water? Did you do any water adjustments?
There's actually
I
no
like-
water in here.
No,
This
okay.
is a waterless. Yeah.
It is like 95% water, I think.
Shit. I always get
yeah,
one thing wrong on this show, and that was it.
So yeah, I did kind of do a Burton-esque kind of water. So it's interesting your feedback, because I didn't want to push it all the way to Burton-on-Trent water, because it was just going to be so many different brewing salts to put in.
Mhm.
But I had sulfates were about 339, chloride 66, magnesium 20, calcium 180, sodium 66. And then bicarbonates, I think we're about 271 with the additions.
Okay. That's actually sounds pretty good. The sodium seems a little, maybe.
What did
Little
you say?
high.
You
Sodium
blipped out
was
there for a
60
second.
something.
What
Sorry,
did you say?
The sodium seems maybe a little high, but I don't know. It's not a big deal. Like, are they, where did that come from? Just one of the sodium bicarbonate, or?
I don't exactly know what I used. I added a little bit of baking soda,
Okay, yeah,
calcium chloride, canning salt,
yeah,
little bit
that's the,
of Epsom salt, and gypsum, a little bit of everything in it to get it there. I used my just the tap water, and then I adjusted it with some of those brewing salts.
okay.
Did
Yeah,
you
the water's-
measure your tap water first, or is it like such hatchy water that's got nothing in it that you didn't bother?
I'm not 100% sure. I've never done an official evaluation of it. I'm just going off the water report from my district. That's
Yeah.
a couple years old,
Okay.
but I think
No,
it
if
is.
you're on the peninsula, you're probably getting hatchy water, which means that it's pretty much as close to nothing in it as you can get.
Everybody's water's going to be different this year.
That's for sure.
Dang.
Oh,
Yeah, I was
God,
looking-
Yeah.
I think that, kind of backing up a little bit, I I have nothing against dry yeast, and it's gotten so much better than it was when we all started brewing. But I'm not sure the Nottingham is necessarily going to give you the complexity that is going to take you up, up in that territory between 40 to 50. And there are so many choices. And I pulled up while we were chatting here that West Yorkshire is actually a Y yeast, 1469, and that's available year round. Apparently, looks like it's a year-round available item. There is a Yorkshire yeast that White Labs makes, but it's a seasonal, apparently like January, February. But you might play around with some alternatives, and dry yeast. Depending on how you brew and the time you have allotted for brewing, it may be that dry yeast is your best choice. But you might play around with trying some different yeasts like the West Yorkshire or something else from some different vendors, or even if you have the ability and the time, break up some wort into, gallon jugs or something. Try each one with a different yeast, see how they vary. I would suggest that that's an easy way, because this beer is so good as it is. We're kind of, in a way, we're having angels dance on the head of a pin here to figure out how to improve it. But that to me seems like, aside from the honey malt, which I think we're all like, yeah, get rid of that. I think that the yeast is probably the low hanging fruit here.
Yeah. Hey, look at
maybe
fucking Walt Whitman over here. Angels dancing on the head of a pin, don't you know? I know that's not Walt Whitman, but anyway, sorry.
That's the leprechaun from Lucky Charms.
Yes, or the movie. I mean,
Yeah, Lep in the Hood, Lep 5.
Yeah. So Kevin, have you entered this in any competitions? And if so, how did it do? Did you get any good feedback score wise? How did it fall?
Yeah, I've like I said, I've been doing different iterations of this over the last 2 or 3 years. And last year, I think I got a few ribbons. First place at Santa Clara. Just read this, the stuff you're drinking was in the World Cup of Beer. And actually, Brian, the reason I got toward this is you were one of the judges.
Yeah.
I was on best of show round there at World Cup. Yes.
And did I score it that similarly?
Exactly the same. You got a second place. You scored it at 39 and
damn,
right on the money.
Dude.
It's amazing.
That's awesome, man. That's cool.
That feels good. I didn't even remember what. Yeah, I remember seeing you win a ribbon there. So yeah. But yeah, that's great. And so, yeah, I think the other judge I was working with me liked it as well. And
I love that. I love it when like shit just kind of like melds together. I mean, it's a small community, but I don't think it's ever happened.
That was
someone's
kind
like, I have fucking receipts from the last time, and you actually did a good job.
Yeah.
We avoided the embarrassment of Brian giving it like the same that score at World Cup and giving it like a 19 here.
Yeah, this is actually dog shit. Like, I hate this. No judge worth their salt would ever score this higher than a 20.
I was worried about that because it's pretty old. I brewed this. I actually kegged this back right before Valentine's Day.
Really, it does not taste that. Yeah. I mean, I wonder if it's just the caramel, but no, it tastes great. I mean, it tastes great. It's a great beer. Personally, I would tweak it a couple, different places. Definitely not as clean fermenting. I want a little more esters in there, like I said, but it's great, man. Do you have any questions for the boys?
No, I think this is great. I've been taking notes as you all been talking.
Cool.
I'm really excited to give a new yeast a try. And that honey malt, one of my from last year, one of my notes to myself was, should I remove the honey malt? So you've helped me figure that out. Definitely remove that. It's not neat. But yeah, I think I'm going to give that, because certainly with this beer, I was trying to kind of bring out some of that yeast character a little bit. I don't really particularly like a lot of yeast in my beer anyway. But for this, to the style, I thought it would be good to kind of get a little bit more. So I appreciate the tip on the Yorkshire, the West.
Yeah, give it a shot, 68, something like that. And, and see, it might kick off, too much, but it's such a broad spectrum of that fruitiness that I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. Give it a shot. See what happens.
Yeah, maybe try 1 or 2 changes at a time though, because we're talking about like yeast. I'm talking about like maybe bump up the gypsum in your water, the calcium sulfate a little bit, but go subtle. If you do adjust that, you might be able to get away with that and the yeast change and
Yeah.
taking away the honey malt and not have the malt complexity suffer at all.
Do that first. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
yeast you can dial in whenever, but I think the malt is obviously key. So maybe dial that in first, like Cooper's saying. Because yeah, you can really kind of go nuts. And it sounds like this is a project beer for you. So you're going to be doing
Yeah.
this multiple times anyway. So
Oh, yeah.
you'll
I
figure
do
it
at
out.
least
Yeah.
Once or twice a year, I do this
Okay.
one.
Mhm.
But I do have a question about the water. If you can give me, so you're saying raise the gypsum to bring up the calcium carbonate or something in there?
The calcium the sulfates just a little bit. And the sulfates, what they do with the hops is they make it play just a little bit different, and it has that little more of a hoppy edge
Right.
that as the beer is, it seems like it dried out pretty well, I would guess. And as the beer dries off your tongue, the minerals kind of grab hold of it, and the hops are just accented a little bit more. And the hop level is already good. I wouldn't adjust that too much. If you wanted to change the Magnum to EKG at the same IBUs, that's fine. You could keep it the Magnum. It's not going to be a big difference. But yeah, it's the water is going to make the hops just cut a little more. And the best of the English bitters I've had have just a little bit, as it dries off, you get that light little minerally. It doesn't have to be like super crazy Burtonized, but you go a little bit higher on that calcium sulfate, the gypsum.
There you go. All right.
And if we're going to talk about like Walt Whitman, when you see a fork in the road, just take, like Cooper was saying, just take one at a time, maybe.
Yeah. Take one fork at a time. That's
Yeah.
classic. Yeah.
Well, you can brew the same beer with 2 yeasts too. It's not that hard, like Brian was saying too. Do 2.5 gallon batches and see which one you
True.
like better.
All right, Kevin, we're going to let you go, man.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate having me on and all the feedback. I can't wait to
Excellent.
do this again.
I wanted
Perfect.
I
man.
did
I'm-
want to
I'm
quickly
happy. Thank
say
you.
as well that
Uh-oh.
Kevin's in my judging class, and we're running a 10-week BGCP judging course. So he's studying to become a judge with
Nice.
us and participating. He brought these out to our 2nd of 3 tasting sessions at Bottle Taps the other night. He brought these beers for me there because he was working to dial this in. So I appreciate that. Appreciate you being a part of the class. And our exam is on June 3rd. We are full, but we're going to bring up, hopefully a lot of good judges in the area here around the region. And I really appreciate the students that are participating and coming to all of our Zoom classes and going to the in-person ones too.
Well, I think it'll be about time that we get some good judges in the area. So
Yeah.
that's good. Kevin, I'm rooting for you.
Brian's one of our teachers too. So, we'll see how he does, but
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
it's
First
good.
of all, before we
one
get
out of
into this,
5 would not repeat.
yeah, before we get into this, class, have I ever told you guys about the time that I had 4 pairs of shoes? Let me tell you. That's my Shar impression. Kevin, we're gonna let you go. We're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come right back. We're gonna wrap things up here in Dr. Homebrew. And if you're listening live, we're gonna be doing another show here in about 5 minutes or whatever. So stay tuned for that. And if you are listening on the app, I guess, or wherever you get your podcasts, we have another show. Maybe we don't. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, hang on, everyone. It's Dr. Homebrew. We'll be right back. All right. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. Kevin split, man. He's like, I'm out. I'm out of here.
Well, you can watch us on the Facebooks.
Yeah,
That's cool.
probably. Yeah, it was a good beer, man. I do like it. It was just, it's a little robust, and maybe I haven't had that many strong bitters before, which kind of sucks. Like living not only in the U.S. for a number of reasons, but because we are so far away from England, where they come over to New York or wherever, and then they truck across the country. It's like I'm very gun shy. Especially being a late 90s beer drinker where you go to Bevmo and everything's hot and you have no idea how long it's been on the shelf. And like, you just sort of like, I don't know. So even now, like I was cruising through Total Wine and I'm looking at stuff on the shelf. I'm like, oh man, that's such a good beat. No, I'm not going to do it. Oh man, that's cool. But I wonder what that no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. But yeah, good stuff overall, man. I think we helped Rob and Kevin out a little bit. Overall, I think the beers were both very good, and I think it's fun to do this kind of stuff, man. We got into, what am I trying to say? We really got into the weeds on some details about how they can fix the beers. I feel like it's been a while since that's happened. Do you guys agree with that?
This is what we're here for, though, and that's the fun
Yeah,
part is
right.
getting into the weeds a little bit sometimes, and
That's what I mean. I
pick
think it
the
was
beer
good.
apart.
Yeah, I think it was fun. I think going back and forth like we did on the ingredients and stuff. I feel like I don't know. I feel drunk is what I feel like.
No,
I'm talking a lot.
I feel like the feedback was okay, and
I drank all of his beer, by the way.
I drank all of it too,
Kevin's
and I'm the
beer.
most impressed. That's like, wow, I gave it a 39 there at the comp, and I gave it a 39 here.
That's
It's
so
like,
cool, dude. I love that for you.
it was perfect. It was
yeah, that's
perfect.
Well, that
great.
just goes to show that why you're a Grandmaster 1, man.
I
There you
can't
go.
say I would do that every time, though.
But
Sometimes
you know what? I
Nope,
think it's
you
in
can
a lot of ways
guarantee
it's
it.
more challenging to take a beer that's a 40 point, 38, 39, 40 point beer and talk
Yeah.
about how to make it a 45 point beer than it is to fix a beer that's like a 20. Like that's
Yeah.
easy
Yeah.
because it's always like, okay, you did this, or this. That's pretty straightforward, but it is. I do it like you're saying, JP. I like getting into the weeds about how do you improve a beer that's already excellent.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't necessarily get that opportunity, or I don't, not really opportunity, but we don't really get into the how do you improve it, and then the back and forth with the brewer, because I feel like a lot of times it's just like, well, I don't know, what do you think, or yeah, I brewed this and whatever,
we're gonna read our sheets and then we're done.
and then
we
we're
don't need to
done. It's like,
listen to-
nope, I don't have any question. But I think it's cool, Cooper, that you did that with the score thing. I feel like that's hard. I wouldn't say hard to do because you can't really do it on purpose. It's nothing you can practice for. But I think it's a testament to Kevin's beer.
Yeah.
Because it was bottled or brewed in February or something like that. So it's already been a couple months
That's not
at the
that
time of the
old.
recording. Yeah, but it's like, but still, I feel like even from day to day, from judging to judging, where it is in the flight, we always talk about that, how flight matters, flight positioning matters, how many are in the flight in general, how many you had before, did you have coffee and fucking orange juice before, did you smoke some fat doobies, were you in the parking lot, that kind of stuff, right? How's your but it doesn't really matter, you're the machine.
Now, if
you have
anyone,
instant recall.
if anyone else wanted to send their beer in to us to have it sampled and commented on and gone into the weeds about,
this will drive them away.
Smoke a doob in the parking lot.
Let's do it, man.
Who would they contact to send their beer in?
They would go Brian at thebrewingnetwork.com. Brian at thebrewingnetwork.com. Send him an email. Brian will get you on the list. We'll get you all sorted out. And, if you're in the Bay Area, maybe we can make some not recommendations, but some positioning issues to get us beer. You don't have to ship it, but if, we'll take beers from wherever you want. If you want to jump on the call, that's the other thing. You don't even have to be on the air with us if you want. We are an interactive BJCP score sheet. So the point of the show is for you to ask questions, but if you just want to listen later, you don't really want to be on the show, that's fine too. Whatever you want to do.
Or I'll meet you in a dark alley and hand you the score sheets through route. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Yeah.
No one's going to have a knife or anything. But if you're
I
shy,
promise.
Yeah, I promise no knives, no guns. We just make the transfer in a dark alley. But don't be shy. I know sometimes people can be a little reluctant, for whatever reason. We're nice. We're kind of funny. I won't tell you about my 4 pairs of shoes until we, maybe later on in the second show that we record.
Yeah.
But I'm a little more tipsy. But yeah, I don't know.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Yeah, don't be shy. We're going to get out of here. Thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in. And until next time, we'll see you later.